No, I would disagree with that. You do have to know scripting. So that's something most people don't realize. You just don't go into cybersecurity. PowerShell and Bash scripting are probably the two most valuable skills you can have in IT. So yeah, there's definitely a need for entry-level cybersecurity. Every company needs people to, even if you have a little bit of experience goes a long way.
Jason, I have a huge respect for you. Throughout your career, you have 35 certifications. I'm talking about Microsoft, Linux, CompTIA, Java, NetPlus, Apple, Cisco, Linux, Unix, you name it.
They're fun to write. I've written a lot of them mainly because in the latter part of my career, it was dual teaching and industry. So I never expected to be in education for any length of time, to be honest with you, back in 1998 when I first started 24 years ago. I used to work for Microsoft in the early 1990s, as well as Sun Microsystems. And so I was on the drivers and interfaces team as a programmer, C programmer. And then I moved to Microsoft doing Motorola 68,000 assembly for Microsoft Word for Macintosh. But yeah, Sun was pretty cool because in 1992, they had this program called Future Tech 1992 in Canada. And the Canadian government flew the top 150 students out to Calgary to be wooed by Canada's top companies. And I was one of the top 150 students. It was Canada's 125th anniversary.
Really?
Yeah. So the reason they flew 125 people out there is it was Canada's 125th anniversary.
According to your bio, you don't just talk the talk, you walk the talk.
Yeah, you gotta walk the talk. It's I'm not a big fan of buzzwords. I suffer from the medical condition that makes me allergic to buzzwords, and it's terrible. It's a horrible infliction. I break out in sarcasm.
And you have 19 published books, several collaborations that you've done. Your second book, I was looking at your bio, your second book is on Unix. I mean, that's the grandfather of all operating systems, right?
Yeah.
And the last one is on Windows Server 2019. That's pretty impressive. 19 published books.
Yeah.
And now you teach subjects related to information technology, application development, enterprise, web, mobile, cybersecurity, all of this stuff. You're also the dean of technology of one of our local colleges. Do you have a life?
Yeah, I definitely have a life outside of technology, and a dog too, which takes up a lot of time. And a daughter who is currently in Australia right now, but when she was growing up, kids take a lot of time as well. So I mean, yes, I definitely have a life. Doing a lot of things doesn't necessarily mean that you have to spend a lot of time or invest a lot of time. The best things in life are things that take a small amount of time but have a big output, have a big payoff.
What subjects do you teach at school? Let's talk about what you do in a regular everyday basis, aside from being a dean and doing all the programs for the college, IT and cybersecurity. What subjects do you teach and what do you do?
So right now in the mornings, I'm teaching our IT, the back end of our IT program, so the more advanced courses. So that's anything. Right now I'm teaching Exchange Server 2019 administration. We're going to be teaching wireless infrastructure and design. We teach SQL Server, Microsoft SQL Server in a lot of depth. We do Linux in depth. We do security and ethical hacking, and Windows Server using my textbook, ironically, the last one.
Very interesting.
The only one on the market that hit when Microsoft decided to expire their certification program and mess up publishers. Now,
if I'm starting in cybersecurity, in IT security, and I'm just fresh out of school, fresh out of like high school, or I'm an immigrant. Right. So I'm coming from another country. I need to get my skills. I'm some sort of formal education in Canada, or I find myself that, I don't have a job anymore. It's obsolete and I need to move into a career and I'm considering being in cybersecurity. What would be your advice to somebody like me?
Okay. Cybersecurity is an end goal. But you have to build up to it. So cybersecurity isn't useful at all unless you have a lot of foundational IT knowledge. So you have to have a lot of knowledge in networking, in operating systems, specifically server and client operating systems, Windows and Linux, and even Mac OS. And you have to understand how key services work and are configured in order to secure those or to understand the problems related with how clients access them. So you have to be very, very good as an IT administrator before moving into a cybersecurity role, no matter what type of cybersecurity role it is. So that's what most people don't realize. You just don't go into cybersecurity, you go into IT, and then you graduate to cybersecurity.
Yes, right? Absolutely. And I see some people on the web also and on YouTube saying that the main thing, that the first thing that you need to do is take a programming language. What do you think about that statement?
No, I would disagree with that. You do have to know scripting. Programming, not necessarily. There is a difference between scripting and programming. It's a subtle difference, but when you get into the meat of everything, you'll see that it is a very big difference in the thought process. You're not working with necessarily objects and frameworks as a programmer when you're scripting. You just write or automate a series of tasks. Understanding how to automate things is a core IT skill today. Because whether you, if you have one server or 200 servers or 3,000 servers in a cloud environment, right now there's containers or virtual machines, you have to automate that configuration, whether it be with tools like Ansible or Pulumni, right? Or even Terraform. What kind of scripting? PowerShell and Bash scripting are probably the two most valuable skills you can have in IT.
You stole the words out of my mouth. I mean, PowerShell is so important nowadays. Everything is done in batches, right? Like you can't just manage one computer. You need to manage them all, right? So in Linux, use of CLI tools and Bash, it's so extremely important to be able to run servers, as opposed to taking something like C++, where you need to compile a language to be able to make it do something like a software piece. I understand that some people say Python is very important. For me, it's like PowerShell and Bash. Linux, you need to know your Linux commands, man. You need to get into Linux. Because most of the servers and the entire cloud infrastructure, even Azure, is built on Linux, right? So those two things are so critical.
Yeah, and more importantly, the reason I mentioned Bash and PowerShell is you don't want to look through a bunch of different languages and see whatever syntax that they use and the same concepts again and again. If you're good at PowerShell, you can automate and manage the configuration of many Windows servers and clients, and most clients are Windows. With Bash, you can automate the configuration of any Linux server, and pretty much most of the cloud is Linux to begin with. The reason that you don't really need to venture into, too many other languages, it's nice to know, but you don't necessarily have to code in PHP, you don't have to code in Python. If you know Bash programming, Python is very, very easy. A solid knowledge of PowerShell and Bash will mean that it will take you a week to be a pro in Python.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? I would actually argue that databasing, it's actually more important.
Yes, understanding databases is very important for cybersecurity because databases run the world. Almost every app that you talk to stores data in some backend database. And there are a lot of security implications with the database architecture and the way we write to a database, and whether we are exposing information available to a network that some threat actor could be exploiting through a SQL injection attack without you knowing, all sorts of really nasty things around databases. So understanding databases and how they work is actually a fundamental IT skill because you have to support them in IT, and it transfers beautifully to cybersecurity. Same thing with email systems and web servers.
Absolutely. And I think all of this stems from the fact that people see cybersecurity as being ethical hacking. Like the glamorous stuff, the flashy stuff, I want to be a hacker, a white hat hacker, and I want to hack into systems and be hired to do penetration testing. They think that Python is the latest thing and they need to know Python and that stuff. Whereas scripting languages like PowerShell and Bash are left behind, right? So the notion that the cybersecurity is ethical hacking is completely erroneous.
One division of cybersecurity, just one.
Exactly.
So cybersecurity has four main areas, right? If you think of it as an industry, there's cybersecurity administration. So that is anything to do with securing existing systems, implementing reasonable security, implementing policies, identifying what types of things you need to do for different systems and different operating systems. Then there's also cybersecurity response, which is the most important one, and that is identifying, monitoring and identifying, so you know when a threat occurs and responding to it appropriately. And so, things like managed detection and response, very important. Understanding how to administer and monitor SIEM appliances for events, how to actually narrow down events to the ones that are the most interesting and get rid of all the noise. So things like, when there is a known attack on some network, regardless of the type of network, how do you the quickest turn off that port on whatever switch or router to isolate that attack? And then if you do have a threat actor get into your network and compromise a few systems, then you may have to do some sort of forensics to identify how they got in,
cybersecurity forensics.
Yeah, forensics. And you may have to see what they touched, because there are legal laws. If they touched client records, if they get encrypted records, if they copy stuff, you have to find that out, because if you need to, if they did, you need to tell your clients that their information was breached within a certain period of time, depending on your laws in your company and your country and your region, right?
Yeah, because you got to take them apart. You have to extract the components. A lot of times the data is erased, so you have to get into the SSD and extract that data out. The whole kill chain, right? You got to analyze the kill chain from beginning to end, and sometimes and that requires specialized skills.
Yeah, right? And even things like mapping out the attack vector with MITRE, right? MITRE attack, and understanding how they got in, so that you can take steps now to plug those holes so that it doesn't happen in the future. Because threat actors will use the same attack again and again and again, different organizations that are in the same industry, because they know that they roughly have the same types of technologies. The fourth area of cybersecurity is the one that people think everything is in cybersecurity, and that is pen testing, right? Cybersecurity analysis. That's what it is. Yes. Cybersecurity analysis is pen testing and vulnerability assessments. And yes, we have to do those, but they're one component in addition to all the other vital components.
And the thing is that cybersecurity analysis, it's a mid-level type of role. It's not an entry-level type of role, right? When you go into cybersecurity at the very beginning, you're put as a cybersecurity analyst, and you need to, and usually it's incident response, helping out other people, staying up late, right? 2 a.m, 5 a.m, 4 a.m, looking at threats on your MDR, and then escalating those if you see that there's something going on inside of the network. It is kind of like the helping out, as opposed to doing the analysis, the vulnerability assessment, the pen test, and all that, because it does take a lot more skill, right? So let's go back to just the entry level stuff. What degrees or certifications would I be able to take, or can I take to advance my career?
So right now there aren't a lot of Microsoft certifications that are applicable to cybersecurity. They have mostly cloud certifications, and they do have Windows 10 still. They call it Windows Client now. They just changed it. Mm-hmm. But COMPTIA, the Computing Technology Industry Association, has everything from the basics all the way up to cybersecurity. So a lot of colleges kind of trust the Computing Technology Industry Association, and one of the benefits of them is they keep their ear very close to industry. So their certs are very aggressively revised according to the current needs of the industry. And they start with things like basic computer knowledge and support. So kind of like the overview of IT, that's called A+. And then they go into networking. So you really have to understand how to do network administration. That's Network Plus. And then there's an intro to security that all IT roles should know. That's Security Plus. And then there's Linux Plus for Linux. There's Server Plus for server technologies, Cloud Plus for cloud technologies. And then there's the cybersecurity certs, which are Pen Test Plus for what you see in the movies, CySA Plus, which is very attractive for most organizations, Cybersecurity Analyst Plus. So it's
Wow.
got all the stuff that you need to do in an organization.
In order to become a cybersecurity specialist, for example, you need to know your IT, right? So we know hardware. You need to know how your hardware works. Starting from the very beginning, how your computer is assembled and put together, each piece of the computer. Then you go into the software, right? And you need to know how databases work, how software works, and then not only that,
Mac OS. You got to know all three.
Exactly.
The more you know
Linux,
of them,
Windows, OS. Yeah. And then you need to know the IP worlds, right? You need to know the internet, how the internet works. TCP, IP, for example, OSI, model, IPs, ports, services, all of that stuff. Right?
Switching. How can you compromise the network? Relies on your knowledge of how networks are architected and connected. And the more you understand regarding IT, the better you are as a cybersecurity professional.
How important is Linux in the IT world?
So in the IT world, if you're going to manage anything in the cloud, if you're going to manage any IoT devices, so Internet of Things devices, which are becoming more common, you'll hear them being called edge devices now. But Linux is a foundational skill. So colleges are now teaching it in the front end. It's also a foundational skill for computer engineering, so programming. Almost all universities and colleges teach Linux in the front end because we create containerized applications that run in a cloud environment or in a private cloud environment in the data center, and push them to Docker Hub where they're pulled into some Kubernetes cluster and orchestrated in a cloud environment the way they want. And that's all Linux technology.
Let's talk about the soft skills. Every time I think about IT, I think about cybersecurity. I think that this industry is an industry of passion. You need to love what you're doing. What would you say about that?
Oh yeah, I think that's something that everyone should do if they want to enjoy IT, right? If technology is a moving target, it's always changing, and if you enjoy that change, if you think it's a learning experience and you attack it like you've done, then you will always enjoy it. You will always grow. You will always learn new things, and there'll always be new things to learn. Everybody who enters an IT, program in college or university will quickly see the benefits of having that passion and will want that passion. They'll see it. They'll say, wow, this is really interesting. I want to know more about this. And there's nothing preventing me from knowing more about it. It also makes you more resourceful. And that is the other key to IT. You don't have to know it. You have to know how to find the answer.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Some people on the web and YouTube, they say you don't need to pay. You can go to YouTube University or Google University and learn. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that's true for any field. I mean, even quantum physics you can learn on your own, but it's a lot easier to learn it not on your own, to learn it in an educational institution that has a structure and a set of courses that guide your thought process every step of the way from A to B. Going to an educational institution fast tracks that learning process.
What I've learned by doing my master's degree and my bachelor's is that it's not just about the subject matter, but it's about the commitment, the responsibility, the obligation that you have to attain your marks. You have to pass your exams day in, day out for 4 years and then 2 years. And that teaches you in life.
Education is more about knowing how to ignore what you don't need to know. Because there is a sea of information out there and very little of it is important. And you have to know what is important and focus on that. And that's really what educational institutions do. We focus on, this is what you need to know. You can forget this stuff. This stuff is fluff. You don't need to know this. This is auxiliary. But let's focus on this. This is what the industry needs you to do. This is how you would use these technologies in these situations.
The other thing is, let's suppose you want to get a job, right? And then you go to a company and you present your resume. And then there is a whole bunch of other people that are also doing the same thing. Who do you think the employers are going to hire first, or they're going to look at first, at least, right? The people that have the formal education, the certifications.
Certifications do make a big difference to an IT still. What I tell people is, it's not mandatory. There are people who work in this industry with no credentials whatsoever. It's just not the majority. If you do have say a degree or a diploma or a certification or all three, you're going to get a lot more callbacks than that person who's trying to break into the industry by proving that they know what they're doing.
Let's talk about money. Is there money in IT security, in cybersecurity?
Yes. So here's the thing. There is a big shortage of entry-level jobs in cybersecurity. What that shortage does is it means that you're more likely to get an entry-level job in cybersecurity versus another area of IT because there's a bigger need for it. So yeah, there's definitely a need for entry-level cybersecurity. Every company needs people to respond to incidents first and foremost. And that's most entry-level jobs, is incident response.
And the money is there.
Right? Oh, the money is definitely there. It's competitive. In fact, in any IT field, whether it's development or programming or IT administration or cybersecurity related, we've seen a progressive increase in just the base salaries. And the reason for that is competition. There is a skills gap. So if you want somebody, you have to compete with other companies that are willing to pay a little bit more. And so if you pay a little bit more, you're going to get that person. If you don't, they're going to go somewhere else.
One of the things that I tell people that are just starting out is whatever opportunity you have for volunteering, for doing internships, for doing co-ops, take them because there's going to give you so much knowledge at the very end, and it's going to help. It's going to pad your resume too, right?
Yeah. Even if you have a little bit of experience goes a long way. Because if they have a job that they can't fill, even if it's an intermediate job, they'll accept someone junior. They're more likely going to accept somebody who's got a little bit of industry experience, whether it be an internship or co-op or whatever, or volunteer.
And there's so many places you can volunteer or you can intern, right?
Absolutely.
So, like we're talking about schools, we're talking about churches, you get any business will be happy.
Especially nonprofits, because they operate on a very small budget. And they have the same needs as any other organization.
Well, thank you so much, Jason. I really appreciate this call and this interview. It was great. I think it's going to be very helpful for students who want to get into a profession, and not just in cybersecurity, but in IT, right? In technology and software development. Have a fantastic Canada weekend, long weekend.
Happy Canada Day. Yeah, it's going to be a great long weekend. All right, take it easy, Dan.